As an adjunct instructor, sometimes you get to teach from a classroom, sometimes you get to just teach online with no video component and no showing of your personality. And then there are other times when you're lucky enough, like me, to get to teach from the studio in your basement. Okay, so I'm probably exaggerating, the studio in my basement. But today we're going to cover, that was not a good start. Obviously we're doing this today. Yeah, because I'm standing in front of you, recording this. Just like when you're giving a speech in public speaking class. Obviously, it's gonna happen today. You're standing in front of the group. Funny notes aside, let's talk about selecting a topic and a purpose. When you're selecting a topic, you should start with brainstorming. Brainstorming is generating ideas by free association. We can brainstorm in numerous ways. You can write down excuse me. You can write down one word and then write down a whole bunch of other words that you think of when you think of that word. You can do concept mapping, you can do topic mapping, you can call up your friends, you can search online. Most people use Google for searching online. But you can come up with ideas for speeches by brainstorming. Now, the important part about brainstorming is that you're not evaluating, not judging. You're just coming up with as many ideas as you possibly can. The judging and evaluating comes later. Dr. Lucas has a video here about some interesting topics, but I feel like you could probably come up with some interesting topics on your own. You can also look in our textbook, and you can also look online.
What did Google?
Once you have a topic selected through brainstorming and then an evaluation process, you want to make sure that you're going to meet the general purpose of your speech. This is the broad goal of the speech. A general purpose of a speech is usually threefold, there are three types of general purposes. There is to perform, to persuade, to inform, to persuade, and to entertain. So if you are assigned a speech to inform, to persuade, or to entertain, then you need to come up with a specific purpose. This is a single infinitive phrase, and it states what the speaker hopes to accomplish. Let's explore the ideas of public speaking and learning public speaking in the college classroom. Is it an essential general education course? I wasn't supposed to ask you a question. It was supposed to be an infinitive phrase. Let's keep going. The guidelines for specific purposes. You want to use a full infinitive phrase, a statement, not a question, avoid figurative language, limit your specific purpose to one distinct idea, and avoid being vague. So actually my specific purpose was to tell you about the importance of public speaking classes. I could even tell you about public speaking classes are essential for people who are going into any field. Either one of those would be a good specific purpose statement. You want to have a full infinitive phrase. So an example of an ineffective specific purpose is avalanches. I live in Colorado. We have those here. But a more effective way to talk about those is to inform my audience about the three major kinds of avalanches. You want to make sure it's a statement, not a question. So ineffective is, what is Dia de los Muertos? Now that might be a good attention catcher, but it is not necessarily a good specific purpose. To be more effective, you want to inform you want to say something like, to inform my audience about the history of Mexico's Dia de los Muertos celebration. Dia de los Muertos, for those of you who don't know, is the Day of the Dead, and it is celebrated around the same time as Halloween. You want to avoid figurative language. So you want to avoid something like, to persuade my audience that the campus policy on student parking really stinks. Okay, does it really smell funny? Or is there something else going on here? So more effective would be to persuade my audience that the campus policy on student parking should be revised to provide more spaces for students before 5 p.m. That makes more sense than student parking stinks. You want to make sure that you have one distinct idea. An ineffective way to do that is to persuade my audience to become literacy tutors and to donate time to Meals on Wheels. Okay, yeah, they're both volunteering, but those are two separate, very separate things that you can do as a volunteer. More effective would be to persuade my audience to become literacy tutors or to persuade my audience to donate time to Meals on Wheels. Two separate and distinct ideas. You want to avoid being vague. Ineffective ways of doing something is to persuade my audience that something should be done about about gerrymandering. Ooh, that's a nice word. Go ahead and look at that one up in the dictionary. It's pretty vague though. Okay, something should be done. What should be done? Gerrymandering? What's gerrymandering? Oh, this statement, specific purpose, leaves us with more questions than answers. So to be more effective, you want to say, to persuade my audience that each state should create a nonpartisan commission to establish criteria for congressional redistricting. That makes more sense. We have a lot less or a lot fewer questions with this statement than we did with the last. So, when you're creating a specific purpose, what are the questions you should ask yourself? A, does it meet the assignment? Did my teacher assign me a persuasive speech or an informative speech? Or did she just expect me to be entertaining? Can I accomplish the argument that I'm trying to make in the time allotted? I have had people who try to tackle big ideas in a short amount of time. Really, in many of our public speaking classes, in 5 to 7 minutes, which is about the longest you're going to get for giving a speech, just because we don't have time to do speeches that are longer than that, it's really going to be hard to tackle the ideas of pro-life or pro-choice, euthanasia. Is it okay to have physician-assisted suicide or not? Gun control. These are ideas that are going to be difficult to acknowledge, difficult to manage, and difficult to fit in and make a good argument in 5 to 7 minutes. You have to make sure that it's relevant to your audience. Does your audience care, or are they concerned about the ideas that you are trying to present? Is it too trivial for your audience? In other words, is it really worth trying to convince your audience of college students or college-age students that we need to build a wall? I'm not sure that they're really concerned about that. If they are, you need to make sure that you let them know why or how it really impacts them. And then the last one is it too technical for the audience? One of my favorite people, we are still friends to this day, was a student in my public speaking class. And he tried to give a speech on nanotechnology. Well, I hung in there with him, but let's just say most of his classmates did not. Everything he had to say was a bit over people's heads. In fact, back in the 1980s, people had really poofy bangs, and they said it was so they could catch information, and so it didn't just go right over their heads. Well, we don't have poofy bangs anymore, so you better make it fit for us. The central idea of a speech is a one-sentence statement, and it encapsulates the major idea of the speech. Phrasing of your central idea is important.
Imagine an 8-year-old boy who never speaks or smiles, or a cognitively disabled man who has few friends but no one to talk to, or an elderly woman in poor health who does nothing but complain about her ailments. These are just a few people that I have seen helped by music therapy. All of them were able to come out of themselves, forget their problems, and interact with other people, if only for a few minutes, because of music. For the past 4 years, I've been part of a jazz ensemble that performs in mental hospitals, nursing homes, and residences for disabled adults. Although I'm not a mental health professional, my volunteer work has shown me that music therapy does improve patients' lives. I'd like to share some of my experiences with you today, and describe some common methods used for music therapy. Finally, I'll briefly explain some theories about why music therapy is so effective.
That was an excellent example of how to phrase a central idea, so I decided to include it here. I hope you don't mind. Some central idea guidelines are to express, again, as a full sentence, don't express it as a question, avoid figurative language, and don't be vague. A complete sentence would be benefits of parkour. That's an incomplete, ineffective, complete sentence. More effectively would be the benefits of parkour include working all muscle groups, developing cardiovascular endurance, and boosting self-confidence. That gives us 3 main points from which to deliver our speech. A central idea should be a statement, not a question. This is like my friend's or former student's speech on nanotechnology. Ineffective is, what are nanorobots? Well, most of us learned more about nanorobots when we were watching Big Hero 6, the Disney movie. But, just in case, more effective are microscopic in size, nanorobots are being developed for use in medicine, weaponry, and daily life. Whew, that sounds really cool. Avoiding figurative language with the central idea. An ineffective statement would be, Costa Rica is an awesome place for vacation. While we may agree with that, awesome doesn't tell us much of anything. More effective would be, Costa Rica has many attractions for vacationers, including spectacular beaches, lush rainforests, and stunning mountains. Again, this sets our listeners up to find these 3 things: spectacular beaches, lush rainforests, and stunning mountains. They can listen for those 3 things in our speech, and it will make them better listeners and us better speakers, easier to follow. A central idea where we are avoiding being vague. Ineffective is studying abroad while in college is a good idea. Duh. But that's going to be really hard to argue because we don't know why it's a good idea. So more effective would be, studying abroad helps students expand their cultural horizons, develop their language skills, and enhance their employability. Absolutely. This way of phrasing the central idea is much better. Here is an example outline. The general purpose is to inform. The specific purpose is to inform my audience of the 3 major races in alpine skiing. And the central idea is the 3 major races in alpine skiing are the downhill, slalom, and giant slalom. We're kind of getting the idea of what the speech should be like. Here are the main points for that particular speech. The first major race in alpine skiing is the downhill. The second major race in alpine skiing is the slalom. And the third major race in alpine skiing is the giant slalom. As you've noticed here, it does say first, second, and third, which are good signposts for your listeners to be able to listen for. However, saying, my first main point is about downhill alpine skiing. My second main point is about slalom alpine skiing. And my third main point is about the giant slalom in alpine skiing. Boring. We already know those are your main points. We're supposed to be practicing our listening skills. So Change it up a little bit. Make it a better variety for us. Help us to really be engaged and be part of your speech.